Thank you so much, and I'm very grateful to Manjri for launching this book at the Pune Lit Fest. This is the first literature festival where this book has come out, so immensely grateful to the Pune Lit Fest and this platform for it. Thank you so much. I know wildlife is competing right now with cricket. There's another session on cricket, and but that's okay. I'm really glad that on a Sunday you all have come here and taken time out. I want to just away from the hurly-burly of this Lit Fest, I want to take you on a journey. And I was hoping that our audio would get sorted out because we had a really nice natural sounds from the forest which I wanted to play for you today. Are we sorted? Why don't you just play the video you already have, because I think... No, just play what you have. I think it's fine. I was hoping that the audio would sort itself out, but okay. You can hear something? Little murmur of birds. So really, what happened to me was I spent so much of my time reporting on all the bad things that were going on. Yeah, let it play. All the bad things that were going on in our forests, whether it's mining or deforestation. So I decided I needed to change my perspective and go traveling around India, documenting all the good things that were happening. So I went off to Manas, where they are bringing back rhinos. This is a landscape which, due to infiltration from terrorists, nobody was going there anymore. It almost lost its World Heritage status. Rampant poaching had taken over. This is a mother and calf that was released, and because of the price of the horn, she was poached. And then a couple of NGOs got together and said, we've got excess rhinos in one protected area. Why not move them around like a game of chess and move the surplus to areas which are deficient? And that's what they did. They made these artificial bomas or enclosures. They got the animals there. They made sure that the park was secure and then released them back in the wild. Now mind you, rewilding is not just about opening a cage, it's a very complicated process. And this I want to show you is the smallest pig in the world. It's called the pygmy hog. Now I don't know if you know, but India is home to the pygmy hog, but we'd almost lost the entire population until Gerald Durrell, a famous naturalist, he set up with the scientists over here that you see, Gautam Narayan. They started breeding these little pigs in captivity. They ran a program where they said, let's save our grasslands, let's get the habitat back, and let's go back in the wild, radio collar them, track them, and see if they're safe. And that's Gautam Narayan. Well, that's not Gautam Narayan, but that was him on an elephant. And so this is one of the pigs at the center. They create a naturalistic enclosure, and because they've been able to do this, they breed in captivity. Otherwise, if you just try and breed animals, it's not so simple, but they recreated their whole. The problem is a lot of communities burn grasses because they use it for thatch, so that is one of the biggest threats. And that is how they've been working with local communities in Manas, in a lot of grasslands, to revive the grasslands and release the frogs. The pygmy hog. This is a riverside incubatory. If you see over here, what are these? It's fascinating. This is in the Chambal River. These are all little turtle hatchlings which are being protected. And they're being protected by this man who used to be a poacher. He's today turned their protector. They're weighed. There's a small microchip which is installed. They're measured. All the biological data is collected. And I was lucky enough to actually be there while they had just come out. And imagine that, they were just put in a bucket and they sounded like, popcorn in a microwave oven. And then we just tipped the basket over and they scrambled and made their way to the river. Fascinating journey. And they wouldn't have made this journey if it wasn't for the, likes of Santram, who's now protecting their nests, which earlier used to just get flooded away when the dam would release water. That's my little girl who accompanied me on this rewilding journey. As I said, I spent 2 years. That's the skull of an elephant. Just to give you a perspective, that's almost the size of a child. So she accompanied me on some of these journeys. This is in Assam, in Pobitara, which has many rhinos. And of course, sometimes she got bored as well. This is a forest guard, the protectors of our forests. We hear about the army. We never hear about our forest guards and the work that they put in, guarding some of our most immense biodiversity and natural wealth. Now, we all know vultures, but vultures got wiped out due to this really toxic poison which is put in medicines on cattle. And vultures feed on cattle. It's called diclofenac. And our vultures, 90% of them got wiped out until our government came forward and said, let's ban this drug. We're the only country in the world to have banned this drug. Well, now South Asia, Nepal has followed, Bangladesh has followed. They would feed on this drug and get poisoned. So we've decided to breed them in captivity, ban the drug from the wild, and now their numbers are resounding back, but it'll take a while. It's a long journey to rewilding. And what we did was, can you see over here? These are like the coir that they've used. This is an innovation because one of the scientists found that they loved using his machan, which was like an Indian charpai he had kept in the wild, and then the vultures came and built their nest on it. So he said, why don't I use this information and make similar beds in captivity, which they nest on. This is our environment minister. Some of them were actually released back in the wild once they were sure that the medicine is no longer there. And this took at least 10 years of working with these birds, breeding them in captivity and finally releasing them out. It's just a few birds. Remember, at almost 50 years back, we had hundreds and thousands of them dotting our skies. The king of birds, as they're called, all virtually got wiped out because of this one drug. From the king of birds to the king of the jungle, Panna National Park in Madhya Pradesh, all 40 tigers were lost to poaching. So what our government did was, the state government said, we have surplus tigers in some parts, let's release them in the parks which have lost their tigers, whether it's Sariska, whether it's Panna. But again, it's not an easy journey. There are virtually 100 forest guards on any given day tracking these animals on foot through the forest, making sure that these animals remain alive, that the poachers don't get to them. It's an extremely tough task. I followed the team around, and we would, lose track. There's a tick, 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 tick sound coming, and you're just following that, and you're hoping that the tick, tick sound means that the animal is alive. It's extremely treacherous. You're on foot, you don't have cars in the jungle, and that's how you're tracking these animals. I just wanted you to take in the sound of the forest for a bit. And then, what happens is, this is Raghu Chundawat. He's the scientist who was the whistleblower, who told the government all the tigers are gone to poaching. What happened to him? The government put cases against him. You're saying that the tigers are gone, so they made the CID, the CBI, they slapped cases on him for raising his voice. He had to fight this case in the court of law. He's now been absolved of all charges. He's back in Panna, but it's not been an easy journey. And I'm again reiterating this because my book talks about it, that it's all very well, you can't just open cages. There are lives involved, there's politics involved, there's money involved. Now, Panna is going to be submerged because the government has put in place a plan called the interlinking of rivers, called the Ken and the Betwa, which will submerge the forest of the tiger. So these are some of the threats which are outlined. From the tiger to the tiger of the waters. This is the Mahasir fish. To my delight, I discovered a private company was actually breeding them in captivity. This is the Tatas. They actually have a place just in Lonavala where they breed them, and I was able to hold the Mahasir in my hand. It feels like soap when you hold them. It's so slippery. And they're again helping them release in the wild. This is Latika. She's a lady who has actually recreated the Aravalis. She's protected them. So I wanted to show that rewilding doesn't just happen out there, it also happens in urban areas. This is Delhi, can you believe that? This is the border between Delhi and Gurgaon. It's a forest which she's managed to revive with a bunch of other citizens. So I want to leave you here just with these images to show you that rewilding is a complicated journey, but I think it gives us hope. And I think that's what my book tries to capture. So I'm going to leave you with these images, and then I'll read some from my book. Okay, so I'm just going to read from the start of my book and how I came upon this idea. In my mind's eye, I'd been scouring the world, seeking out all that was wrong and needed to be fixed. I saw air laden with carcinogenic particles, plastics choking marine life, and sludge pouring into our very rivers. My soul was weary too. I'd become too used to seeing the world consistently deprived of wilderness, carpeted with concrete. My heart ached for a rich forest where species of all shapes and forms thrived. I stared out of my window one languid winter afternoon, my cup of coffee as bitter as my outlook. It was that time of the day when my toddler was asleep and I took a pause between the whirlwind morning behind me and the evening that lay ahead. The mid-afternoon reverie was broken by the sight of a coppersmith excavating a nest for itself. A pair of grey hornbills chased each other through the maze of overhanging branches that bent over our house, even as the shoot of new leaves pushed themselves out from the old trees that line the main road. Even this mosaic of urban nature that stared at me through my study was always in a state of flux. The ladybirds would soon arrive in the Botox Park behind our house, offering a glimpse of their tomato red wings to my toddler before vanishing. Tiny spiders hard at work, clinging on to their silken nests, would be swept away by the overzealous gardener the next day. Nature was constantly attempting to push its shoots out, to renew itself wherever it could. And in that instant, I realized it was time to renew my interpretation of nature as well. So this is my book, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all so much for taking this time out. I'd be happy to take any questions. Any questions, anything you'd like to discuss, I'd be happy. Yes. Yes. Okay, so Manjari's asked a great question. Rewilding is this concept which is actually, it's taken the Western world by storm. Europe, America, they're all now embracing this term called rewilding. It was actually coined by an American biologist called Michael Soule, where he said that we need to rewild vast tracts of land. And he said that conservation has become now too bogged down with pessimism. And I think what it has done is, for the wildlife movement across the world, it has renewed our hope in nature. But as this book explores, for India, we don't have vast tracts of forests. So can we embrace rewilding? That's the question which I was trying to answer. And for that, you need to read my book.
A few years ago, maybe a decade or so ago, I used to make films for the Forest Department and the Social Forestry Department of Maharashtra, and also privately. These were documentary, typical kind of films, nothing to boast about. But we used a term called afforestation. So is it the same thing?
No. So thank you for asking that fantastic question. I also asked myself, rewilding, it should just be about we go and plant trees. But rewilding actually is a slightly more technical term where it says that afforestation may be just one half of it. I think the term which comes closest to rewilding is restoration ecology, where you restore a habitat back to its traditional form. Afforestation may be one component of it. If you look at
the difference, if I may.
Yes. If you look just in scientific terms, so rewilding is based on 3 C's: connectivity, carnivores, and there's a third one. I will come to that. So these 3 C's is what defines rewilding. And what Michael Soule said was that he, of course, said that you need larger tracts of land to do rewilding. So it's not that you just go and plant trees. Have you revived the ecosystem? Have you brought the predators like the carnivores back? If you've done that, then yes, it is rewilding.
But I think it's happened in many places, in Assam and in...
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those were some of the cases.
Sorry, I was not there. I had my own session, so I'm
Okay,
late.
so you missed that. So one of the cases I give is of Assam, where rhinos are being moved around.
Yeah.
But what I say is, again, it's not just afforestation. What they did was, they restored the habitat, then they removed the cause of poaching, which was, there was infiltration, they made sure that the habitat was first secure, and then they brought the rhinos back into that landscape, and not just rhinos.
Physically lifted from somewhere.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Because
That was the challenge. That
Oh.
was the challenge. How do you bring a megaton animal
Yeah.
like the rhino, and at least, 10, 15 of them, they were transported from Kaziranga. So in my book, I actually say that we're playing, it's like almost playing a game of chess.
Yeah, yeah.
You're lifting the animals and you're literally physically
Yeah, and
placing
like
them.
the Noah's Ark, I mean, you put them in one thing and then
Absolutely.
leave them somewhere.
Great example. Yes.
Yeah, so that's wonderful. Sorry, if anybody, I would not take much time.
Sorry, I actually have two questions. So the first one is, so sometimes an animal might go extinct in a certain region, and you might have a close substitute for it.
Right.
But as you said, nature fights back. So is it possible that the ecosystem might have found a way to stabilize itself, and then is it a good idea to still rewild in that area?
Great example. So a conservation biologist would say that every species in nature has a role to play in that ecosystem. So it's a yes and no. There are cases where a species has gone extinct, but you know what? Conservation is still so limited in its science that we don't even know from the places where species have gone extinct, we still don't know what the impacts are going to be. We're still documenting it. I would say, why let a species go extinct? I mean, that's what I would argue. I would make a political argument. I wouldn't even make a scientific argument. I would say that every species occupies a niche in nature, and I think we should be fighting for every species to be alive. That's how I see it. Exactly. There was a question. Please.
Yeah, my question is, we only took some examples of a few places in Assam and Madhya Pradesh, but has everything in India been mapped out and understood that these are the areas where we need to focus on rewilding? And is there any agency in India that is at least starting to think or putting together a plan on doing this on a continual basis for many years to come?
Again, very great question, and I'm happy that even though the numbers are low, the quality of questions are so great. I thought the same thing. Rewilding as a term may be new, but I outline in the book that we were actually rewilding even before the term was born. So I give the example of 1937, where the Maharaja decided near Jaipur that the tigers had been eliminated because of hunting. So he actually brought in more tigers from the neighboring state. So I give the example of the 1930s that if we go back in history, here was a prime example where a species was being rewilded. There are other examples, for instance, communities outside Pune, you have sacred groves. I've been told, I've visited one of those. So I'd like to also say that before these fanciful terms came, communities were already rewilding and protecting forests. So it's not like I wrote a book and therefore it's happening. To get back to your question of, is there one agency doing that? No, sadly, no. But there is a lot of good work happening all over the country. Is it happening under the term of rewilding? No. Is it happening as restoration ecology? Yes. Sometimes they call it afforestation. My concern with afforestation is it only focuses on हमने 10 पेड़ लगा दिए, हमने 100 पेड़ लगा दिए. Which are those trees? Were they ever found in that area? Are they endemic to that area? What are the species that you brought back? Did you help revive the ecosystem? And when I say ecosystem, I mean, if there's a wetland, did the birds come back? It's not just about cleaning lakes or cleaning beaches. I think it's a far deeper process and a far, I would say, complex process. There are roots and shoots happening all over the country, but there's no unified agency. No. Yes, there's a question here. Oh, sorry. Can we give him a chance, please? Yeah.
I mean, the focus is usually on forests, but we have grasslands, we have deserts, which are also very valuable ecosystems.
Exactly.
And they are unfortunately termed wastelands
Yeah.
by the government, in the old revenue maps, and that tradition continues. So we need to focus on those systems also.
Yes.
Not just forest ecosystems.
Exactly. So one of the myths I've busted in this book is I've said that the forest department, to save that pygmy hog, actually had to go and uproot trees. And people said, what kind of rewilding is this? क्या पेड़ काट रहे हो? So I said, पेड़ काट रहे हैं क्योंकि grassland लगा रहे हैं. So you have to see, as you very rightly said, India is not just about forests. We have wetlands, we have grasslands. The cheetah used to be excuse me, the cheetah used to be an iconic species of the grasslands. And you mentioned that should we bring the species back? So this was debated, by the way, in none less the Supreme Court of India. Because somebody went to court and said, we can't even manage our tigers and leopards, and you're saying bring in the cheetah from Iran. Should we not? So, you know, like you said, should we get another replacement species? Because what they found was the genetic map of the Iranian cheetah was very similar to the Asiatic cheetah which went extinct. So they said, should we get cheetahs in from Iran? And the Supreme Court debated this, and finally they said, A, it's very expensive. B, we don't have vast tracts of grassland to be able to afford it. So currently that process is on hold. So I think it also ties into what you asked before. Please.
Sorry, we have run out of time. For my watch, 2 minutes, but anyway, your watch, I can understand. See, we already have this man-animal conflict going on in so many places due to lack of land, encroachment of humans into their territories and habitats, and of course forests are depleting and all those things. So rewilding, do we have space for that? And wouldn't it increase the man and animal and wild conflict more?
So actually rewilding should reduce that conflict. The argument being given is that there isn't enough good quality habitat left, and therefore animals are having to move out of their natural. Why does a leopard stray to human habitation to pick up dogs?
Yeah.
Did anyone know? The scientists studied and found that their favorite food is dog.
Oh, but
So-
with wild dogs?
No, not wild dogs. Stray dogs, well, I should
No,
say
I
pet
mean-
dogs living, you
No,
know,
they
with
pick up
people
that-
as pets. So they pick those up. Why? Because there's not enough prey base left in the forest for them to pick on. So rewilding, I would hope, would not just, and that's why when you asked me the definition very rightly,
Yeah.
rewilding should hopefully bring back the prey base, not just the top predator, but also sufficient numbers of the prey base.
And when you say you artificially do that,
Yes.
birds, do you do artificially those? Or you
So
do-
there are examples, as I gave, of the vultures in this book. I've discussed that vultures wasn't that, you know, 3 conservation groups came, let's put 100 birds in captivity, let's breed them to 200, 300, then we'll open the cage and they'll all
Yeah,
fly
it's
out.
been done so
They
many
actually
places.
had to create what was called vulture safety zones. And scientists went undercover as detectives to see if that one poison which was wiping out the vultures, is it still available in the pharmaceutical shops at our chemists? Has it disappeared completely? Only then they said, we will release these birds outside in the safety zone. So I think what I've tried to show is that rewilding is a perilous, expensive journey, but at least it gives us hope that the Eden of conservation can somehow be attained. And sorry, this is a pitch for the book. If you would like to pick it up, it's available downstairs at Crosswords, and I'd be happy to sign copies. I'm around all afternoon. Thank you so much for coming.